I first got to Washington, I found out everybody up there had some type of credentials. Hey, Joe. Well, I didn't have any credentials. So I got to thinking about that, you know. We had folks there that had master's degree, PhDs. All of them had a BS. But I didn't have any credentials, so I just adopted Mac Collins RFD. That just simply means rural free delivery. But a lot of folks up there don't know what it means, and that's good. You're talking about the congressional pension. I had an unusual opportunity last week because I had been trying to get this particular opportunity for about 2 years, and that was to have a one-on-one conversation with the president. I met him down in Columbus. You got me saying Albany, Tom. Down in Columbus at Fort Benning, and I rode up to Warm Springs with him. And after the ceremonies, we had talked about Social Security on the flight up, and then, of course, the whole theme of the FDR was about the working man and the underprivileged and such. So I went back in to bid farewell to him, and I looked at him and I said, you know, sir, Social Security is my old age pension. I said, I want to say that again. Social Security is my old age pension because I declined the congressional pension. My company doesn't have a pension program. I don't have a 401k plan. I do have an IRA, but again, Social Security is my old age pension, and I'm on the Social Security Committee. And I just want to make that point to you. And I meant that. It is. And it's very important to everyone who is paid into that system, and I'm proud to be on that subcommittee in the Ways and Means. Those letters that Tom's going to be sending out, reply to them, sign the check, don't worry about signing the letter. You know, yesterday being tax day and being a member of the Ways and Means Committee, it came to me as actually what Ways and Means actually stands for. If you find a way to make it, Congress will find the means to take it away from you. I want to clear up one rumor, being that we got Bill Shipp here. There's been a rumor floating around the state that I might run for the Senate next year, being that the current senior senator may not run, and we don't know whether he will or not. But I wanted to clear that rumor up. I started the rumor. But seriously, I am enjoying serving in the U.S. House. I enjoy serving on the Ways and Means Committee. It has been kind of in the middle of what's been going on in Washington in the last few months. Someone at the table a while ago was talking about a strike, and some of the folks think they're on a mission from God. Well, all of us left Washington on a mission from Ute. And the mission from Ute is to get back out here among the people, back out here among the grassroots people and those who make this world and this country go round, and tell you one thing straight up. We made you some promises. By gosh, we kept those promises. I'm not going to walk through all of the provisions of the contract because I'm sure every one of you kept up with it. I'm sure probably several of you have become C-SPAN junkets in the last few months. I know someone said earlier they stayed up mighty late at night watching us up there, especially when they get into the special orders when there are a lot of performances that go on the floor of the House. But you do know that 9 out of the 10 provisions that we had promised we would bring to the floor for a vote, all 10 came for a vote, 9 of them passed. The one that did not pass is the term limits. That one will come back, as Newt says, the first thing in the 105th Congress in January of 1997. Well, where do we go from here? You know, we spent 92 days. We've addressing the provisions of the contract. We've laid the foundation. Now it's time to build the structure, and that's where we go from here. The first 92 days were easy. Long hours, but that's nothing new. But they were easy compared to the challenge we have ahead of us. And the goal that we have now is to create a safe and prosperous future for this country, for our generation and our children to follow. If you just stop and think, we're going to have to lay out in the next few months a plan that will actually spend $11.7 trillion over a 7-year period. $11.7 trillion. As a friend of mine in Griffin, Georgia says, that's more money than a show dog can jump over. The debate, though, is not going to be just about the budget. It's going to be about the future and doing the right thing. And what is the right thing? What have we got to do? And there are 5 things, and you'll hear me mention them a couple of times. First of all, and we've got to do this with compassion. A lot of people are saying we don't have any compassion, but we do. But we've got to replace the current welfare society with an opportunity society. And Newt says welfare state. I don't like to say welfare state. I like welfare society. That's what we've created. And then we're going to have to end the centralization of micromanagement by bureaucrats in Washington of how we operate our businesses and our daily lives. We must promote prosperity, economic growth, and take-home pay. By how? By reducing taxes, addressing litigation reform, and regulatory reform. And fourth, we've got to accept the information age. The government has got to come up to par, up to snuff with the information age. And fifth, we've got to balance the budget. And the 2 things that we've got to address, 2 sobering things we've got to address in balancing this budget, and that is the crisis in Medicare and the upcoming crisis in Social Security. Both are staring us in the face. How many of you actually saw Newt on the tube the other night with his national address on prime time on Friday night a couple of weeks ago? That was the beginning of a new dialogue. And that's one of the things that we're doing. That's one of our orders, is to go back home and establish a new dialogue. And we've been doing so. We've held several town hall meetings in the 3rd District. Amazing that most every one of them have had nothing but positive response. I've had no real negative response at any of the town hall meetings about what's going on in the first 100 days. But our purpose is to inform people of what's coming up, what's going to happen between now and September, and the fact that we're going to need all of the grassroots support that we can get. Because we're going to reshape government, and we're going to balance the budget. And we need everyone. And the purpose for the partnership, and I'll go back over the 5 things again, is to replace welfare with opportunity, to decentralize the government, reduce taxes, accept the information age, and balance the budget. Why do we have to address welfare? To me, that is the #1 issue facing this country, is the welfare system. You can take the tax issue, that's second. Welfare to me is the first one, because the current welfare system has failed. It's been in place now going on 60 years. It really picked up momentum and steam about 30 years ago. But it has actually failed, and the failure has come at the cost of poor people. It's been funded by those who work, but it's come at the cost of poor people. Poor Americans have been trapped in unsafe housing. They've been trapped in unsafe neighborhoods. They live under rules that are anti-work, that are anti-family, anti-property ownership, and all has been done in the name of compassion with good intent, but it's been a failure. Even the president said in 1992 as a campaigner, we've got to end welfare as we know it. Well, to end it as we know it doesn't mean to reform it, because if you reform something, you just take a substance and you reshape it and you have the same substance. We've got to end welfare as we know it by changing it completely, and that's what this Congress has done. We've done that in the House, and hopefully the Senate's going to take hold and do the same thing, and that's where we need your partnership. But just look at welfare. We're spending over $300 billion a year in some way, in some shape, form, or fashion on welfare. 26% of the families in this country draw some type of government subsidy that's classified as welfare. In the last 30 years, we've spent $5 trillion. And since 1965, the number of children, yes, sir. He agrees with me that this is the number one issue. Since 1965, the number of children living in poverty has doubled. The number of teenage pregnancies has doubled. The number of teenage suicides have tripled. As Newt says, no civilization can survive when you have 12-year-olds having babies, 15-year-olds killing each other, and 18-year-olds who can't read the diploma that they're given. I said given. So we've got to address the number one issue, and that's welfare. Decentralization of government, we'll go back to that one. We're going to restore states' rights and local rights. We're going to ask each committee to review each program, each agency, each function of government, and ask the question, is this really a part of government? Is this something government should be doing? If so, what is the priority of this? And third, can we afford it? And if we ask that of each one of the functions of government, I think we'll wind up probably downsizing considerably, because there are a lot of duplications in the federal government. Reducing taxes, regulations, litigation. Do you realize that the federal tax share of the median household income is now up to 24%? In 1970, it was 16%. In 1950, it was 5%. If we had the same standards of taxation that we had in 1970, each household in this country would enjoy an additional $4,000 of their earned income. So welfare is first, taxes are second. Just think back between 1975 and today. We've had 3 recessions. The annual growth has been at 2.6%. Annual income increase has been at 1%. It's quite a difference in that in what you find with Japan and other industrialized nations. Transformation to the information age. Well, you would think the government would be one of the first to accept such a transformation. I don't know if you saw Newt hold up the little vacuum tube. We're the world's largest purchaser of vacuum tubes. Obsolete, just because of our procurement process. We must, as we authorize, appropriate, and purchase. If that means that you need additional equipment in the air traffic control for safety, you just don't get it because of our procurement system. As Newt stated, we could learn a lot from the Ford Motor Company right there in Hateville. 15 years ago, they reorganized, transformed their business there. They're building the same number of cars, 2.5 times the quality with half of the workforce, instead of having a bloated bureaucracy as we have in Washington. I think you'll see a merging, or maybe an even elimination of some agencies. Their task force among the freshman Republican, they've been joined by others to look at actually eliminating 4 agencies: education, energy, commerce, and HUD, or merging them or privatizing as much of them as they can. Balancing the budget, number 5, with the crisis of Medicare and Social Security staring us in the face. Why do we need to balance the budget? I mean, you balance your home budget. If you don't, you get these little notices from the bank. I've seen some of those. They frighten you. 1995 today, what is our debt? Who knows? $4.8 trillion. What are we spending annually on interest, just interest alone on the debt? Over $230 billion. What will it be in 1999, the year 2000? It'll be over $6.5 trillion with an annual $400+ billion for interest. In fact, within the next 9 years, we will actually accrue interest that will be more than the national debt today. $5.2 trillion in interest in the next 10 years versus the $4.8 trillion in debt. In fact, the president's budget that he sent to the Hill, the one that's supposed to cut the deficit, will spend more on interest in 1997 than we'll spend on national defense. In 17 years, the entitlements and interest alone will consume all of the tax revenues. That leaves nothing for any of the other agencies, nothing for defense, justice. All goes to entitlements and interest. They say, and I think it's true, that the figures show it, that the balanced budget, it costs every one of you in the form of higher interest rates. Predictions are that if we get the budget balanced, under control, that interest rates will average 2% less. What does that mean to a homeowner? Let's take a $75,000 home, 30-year mortgage, 8.75% interest. 2% less would save that family almost $1,250 a year. Interesting, though, the family would not enjoy the full $1,250 because then it would become taxable income, and who gets part of it? The state and the federal government. So reduction in spending, reduction in taxation can actually lead, and it's proven, to increase revenues for the federal government. Why is Medicare in a crisis? Because next year we begin spending more than we take in the Medicare tax process. And by the year 2001, Medicare will be broke. What little supposedly surplus we gained will be gone. It will be bankrupt. What if we wait till the year 2002 when Medicare is bankrupt? What will that mean to the people? It'll mean higher FICA taxes to the tune of about 125%. It'll mean that seniors will pay about 300% more for their so-called premium at that time than they're paying today. I don't call it a premium, that's just a tax on the Social Security checks, all it is. So we can't wait till 2002 to address it. You're going to see Congress address Medicare during this Congress, this session, probably later this year. Social Security, I'm a baby boomer, born 1944. That's the reason I was stressing to the president that that's my old age pension, because I see it coming. I can feel it in my bones too. But by the year 2013, we will reach the same plateau with Social Security as we're reaching next year with Medicare. We'll begin sending out more in benefits than we'll be collecting in taxes, unless you raise the tax. And then the year 2030, Social Security, again, will be in the same boat as Medicare is predicted to be in the year 2001 and be broke. There are 4 facts that drive the fact that Congress must address the budget. I reckon you've gathered by now that's what we're going to work on between now and September. That is the rising cost of the interest on the debt, rising taxation, Medicare, and Social Security. Can't say it enough. Those 2 elements, and plus the debt and the interest on the debt, are going to force Congress to do what it has to do. If you think you've heard a lot of rhetoric and distortion of the truth in the first 100 days, you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't heard nothing yet. It's coming. It's going to be more so. But it's a job that's got to be done. There are a lot of us that are standing up, and thank goodness the people saw it last year and gave us the help, and we are facing that challenge. We have good leadership in the Republican ranks in Washington, and we're going to meet that challenge. Between now and September, we're going to lay it out to the people. You'll see exactly how it's going to be done. By the year 2002, we will have a balanced budget. We will have a more prosperous economy, and everyone will enjoy lower interest rates. And that means everybody can spend more money that you earn. Taxation today, 15% of your 10% of your tax goes to indirect taxes, 15 to state and local, 25 to the federal government, letting you enjoy 50% of what you earn. As I said earlier, ways and means means that you simply, if you find a way to make it. There have been members of Congress and a Congress in the past that has been mean enough to take it. This one is changing that attitude altogether. We have a real good tax bill. Interesting comment last week with the president was, as I was leaving, I said, you know, the whole idea behind the legacy of FDR was to help the little man. We have to look after the little man. The big guy can look after himself and will take care of himself. But every once in a while, you have to give just a little bit to the big guy so he'll help the little man. And that's what's in the tax bill. I won't tell you his response, but you would be surprised at his response. And the reason I won't, because Bill's sitting here, but it was very favorable. Very good response came from the president on that issue. Why don't we stop there? You got a couple of questions? I got some questions. What do you want us to do? How you want us to do this? And what do you think we ought to cut? And who do you think we ought to get rid of? Now, who's got the answers? Yes, sir.
Representative Collins, as I sat here listening to you, I recall that 15 plus years ago, the congressman from this district, Larry McDonald, was making speeches just like that. I thank you for saying these words. And I would, any of you who remember Larry and were in some of those audiences at that time, remember those speeches. Some of us weren't listening then. I pray that we're listening now. That's what his said.
Thank you. And I think people are listening. As I said, the response that we've gathered at the town hall meetings has all been very positive. This is basically the same message we give the town hall meetings. The only difference, we have a few slides, a few transparencies that we show. But people understand that there's real problems facing this country. And people are just tired of seeing money come out of their checks, or they have to mail in, as they did yesterday, and the funds being transferred to someone who's just trapped in a society that can't get out of because the government has trapped them there. And they're tired of it. Yes, sir.
How much consideration is being given to privatizing Social Security so that people would have a choice of having a mandatory deduction rather than going to government, going into private investment like 401k?
There has not been much talk in that area. One of the things that I have mentioned to other members of the subcommittee on Social Security, and I mentioned this too to the president last week, in order for the people to trust us to deal with Social Security, because you know if you mention Social Security, I mean, you're automatically put out there and shot at by a certain group out of Washington. I mean, they'll shoot holes in you left and right. It look like a sieve before it's over with. But we've got to take the Social Security money out of the general fund. Take it out completely. We've made a standalone agency out of the Social Security Administration. Now the funds need to come out. And the funds need to go over into a separate account called a trust fund. We need to operate the Social Security Administration out of the trust fund. We need to pay the benefits out of the trust fund. And when I said that, the president said, well, what about the deficit? Won't that increase the deficit? I said, it sure will. But it'll tell the people the truth. But the other thing is, you just take those surpluses and you buy government securities with them, as any other investor would. So, ooh, that's an interesting concept. And it is. I mean, you know, it's truthful in, it's telling the people the truth. It's truthful in spending. It's truthful in debt. But that needs to occur. I think at some point in time in the future, the very near future, we're going to have to devise some type of plan for Social Security that will be very similar to any other type of pension program. You'll be receiving benefits based on vested interests, and there'll be a line drawn that'll age forward, that are currently under the system will stay under the current system, but the system will be changed for others. I'd rather see us do that than try to keep raising the age, because under the current tax system, if you pay in the maximum to Social Security under the current tax rates, and you're about to my age or maybe 5 to 10 years younger, it'll take you 17 years just to break even with the system, just to get back what you paid into it in taxation. Raising the age is not the answer to it. It's to better organize and utilize the funds and pay out the benefits based on the vested interests and those who are vesting into the Social Security. Someone right here had to end it. Bert?
What do you think of Dick Armey's flat tax proposal? Do you think it's got a chance of passing at the time?
After yesterday, I think it's gained a lot of momentum. I know when I got down to Fort Valley last night, there were 2 TV stations out of Macon there, and I walked in and they wanted to do a little quick interview. I said, well, the answer to your first question is yes, the flat tax has picked up momentum. I said, how do you know what the question was? That is a question that we received quite frequently in the last 10 days. We'll hold hearings on the flat tax and on consumption tax later this year. You know, Archer has, and I'm not really familiar with his proposal, but he has a consumption tax proposal. Army has the flat tax. Both will enjoy hearings later in the year, and I haven't taken a position on either one. I think we have one of 3 alternatives: either revise the current system or go to one or the other. There's a lot of interest in doing away with the IRS, which would you'd have to go to the consumption tax to do so. Yes, sir.
Healthcare. What if anything's happening on healthcare?
First thing that'll be addressed will be in the Medicare area later this year. Then the only other things that I know that we'll probably be addressing as far as health care will be in the area of pre-existing condition and job portability. Basically, that's it. One thing we've already done is for the self-employed, put back in place the 25% deduction, made it retroactive to the 1st of 1994 for last year's tax year. It increases to 30% for the year 95, and it's permanent until the Congress changes it again. There's no sunset to it as was in the previous bill. Yes, sir.
My question is regarding what I would call the moral fabric of our society. Not only seeing a rise in the death of preborn citizens, but the euthanasia and recognition of doctor-assisted suicides. We see the rise of drugs and the breakdown of the family. My concern is once we balance the budget, that we're going to see a higher amount of income but a lower standard of living. How can government address some of the social concerns of our society when its role at today doesn't seem to be perceived as social engineering, and that's some of the largest problems that we're facing today?
I couldn't quite understand everything you asked, but you're talking about the moral basis of our society. Let's go back a number of years when, and I lay it all mainly at the feet of welfare, in the attitude and what we've taught through the current welfare system. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but AFDC was actually put in place in 1935 during the Depression, and it was for the purpose of helping families where the father was actually absent from the home or was disabled to work. In 1940, the Social Security was changed to put in place the survivor's benefits. At such time, the AFDC was supposed to sunset. It did not, as you know. 1956, Social Security again was changed. This time, disability was added. Again, FDC was to sunset. It did not. 1965, we had a lot of changes in law, federal level. We put in the Great Society, and I think that's when the real crux of the problem with morality started. In 1940, based on the intent of the AFDC, 30% of families that were receiving AFDC, the fathers had actually abandoned them. In 1993, that had increased to 86%. No one ever dreamed such would happen. But a lot of it came from the Great Society in 1965, beginning in 1965. For the next 5 years, from 65 to 70, those receiving benefits more than doubled, from over 4 million to 9 million. And it was during a time that unemployment rate was 3.8%, the lowest 5-year span in a 40-year history. What happened? What did we do during that period of time? We taught a whole new generation that it was your right, and it is your right, to demand from the government an income. It's your right to have children out of wedlock and demand from the government that the government take care of those children. We taught a generation that it's all right, it's your right to father children, it's your right to pass that responsibility on to someone else to take care of those children, and that is the government. And that has been, I think, the great society, the welfare system. What we've taught people has been the decaying of morality in this country. How do you change that? That took place in a short 5-year span, but has still in place today, 30 years later. I think you change it by going back to exactly what we're trying to do in the welfare system. What are we doing in the welfare system? How are we changing it? First of all, we're ending the entitlement. We're sending the responsibility back to the states along with the funding. We're actually taking and reducing cash. Those saying cash is the root of all evil. We're taking and reducing and eliminating cash in the area of illegitimacy. If a teenager has a child, no cash. In regards to what the opposition is saying, we're not taking any food out of the mouths of any children because we're leaving in place the nutrition program, food stamps and WIC. We're leaving in place health care. Any family that's on the current welfare system that has additional children out of wedlock, no cash benefits for the additional children. Again, leaving in place food, nutrition, and health care. We're also denying cash, if everything goes through as we plan, to aliens, legal or illegal. There's a sponsorship and a responsibility for those who sponsor in those areas. Also, we're denying cash in the area of alcoholics and dope addicts. Cash is where we're addressing the problem. And when you look at illegitimacy rates versus spending, you'll see the two parallel. I wish we had the transparencies. They just parallel each other. The more you spend in the area, the more cash you give someone, what I call immoral behavior, the more of it you have. And I think, well, to address the problem, we must address it in the fashion we're doing so. You know, the whole debate on the welfare issue turned from that of the issue itself and what it has stemmed and what it has caused. It turned to a division, an attempt to divide people by the haves and the have-nots, by the class, to divide people by race. I heard the congressman from 5th District of Georgia and showed him on TV in the pulpit of a local church on Sunday before the welfare bill came to the floor, saying the contract with America is not a contract with America, it's a contract on us. An attempt to divide people by race. It's been an attempt to divide people by nationality. And all that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's an attempt to give back to people who have been entrapped into a system the opportunity to enjoy life and get out of that system. And that's exactly what this new program will do. You know, when you stop and think about division of people, a lot's been said about the school lunch program. I mean, we're going to end it. We're going to do away with school lunches. As I told Sam Gibbons from Florida, bull. That's bull, sir, and you know it. No way are we going to end any school lunch. But if you stop and think about division, what is the first exposure of a child to division? Division by class. It's when they sit around that school lunch table. Half of them pay, half of them don't pay. And you don't think those children know which half is which? I've had people visit the office in Washington when they first started talking about the welfare bill, the Personal Responsibility Act, and say, hey, don't put school lunches in there, it's not welfare. And later on in the conversation, they would say, you know, there are a lot of students that won't eat lunch because they don't want to be classified as being on welfare. It is. And it's the first division of people. And it starts at a very young age, and it lasts all the way through the system. You know, it was all started with good intent. The whole current welfare system was started with good intent. The old saying, the road to the pool house is also paved with good intent. The system is wrong. It's failed. It's not working, and it's dividing people. And that's the reason, to me, it's the most important issue we're facing in Congress. Taxation is second, because if you're going to move these people off of a welfare roll, you need a payroll to move them to. And that goes back to the tax incentives that are in this. Also, the tax credits to families that will enhance the cash flow of the private sector, all for the purpose of trying to create additional jobs so that when you do begin to move these people out of this system, they'll have a place for them to go. In the back, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Over 200 years ago, we created the first free hospital in this country. It worked. Welfare should be returned to the churches. Our churches have done wonderful with that system until the federal government took it over. And check the history of this country. Richard Allen, a slave, started the first taking care of system in this country, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What is wrong today with the welfare system? And we had no welfare fraud. Today we will have no welfare fraud if the system is turned back over to the churches and it is managed by good intentions. We're 208 years old. We have the record, we can do it, but the federal government insists that they want to do it and they don't know what they're doing.
Yes, I understand that perfectly. You know, and the gentleman is right. And I was down in Barnesville, Georgia the other day. They asked me to come speak at the groundbreaking for Habitat for Humanity. And I spoke on the welfare issue there. I think it was a little bit unexpected, but I did. But I put it to them this way, and this is very along the lines you're talking about. If that house had to come from one of the federal programs, and there are a number of programs that would allow the federal government to go in and put that house in place, but this particular house was coming from the local area, local donors, local workers, a local organization. The difference is, if it came from Washington, it would be welfare. But with it coming from the local community, it's compassion. It's compassion and help for your neighbor and your fellow man. And there's a world of difference in those two. And that's the reason we need to end the current welfare system as we know it. We need to return it back to the state and the local areas and the local people to help their neighbor. It's going to take a while to do it. As I said, it started in 1935 under FDR, and I don't believe that FDR ever intended for it to be an indefinite program. It enhanced itself in 1965, and it's not going to be undone in 12 months. It'll take 5 to 10 years to reverse the trend, to train another generation that this is not the way it's done, this is not a right, has been trained by your previous generation.
One last question. The contract with America, the legislation the House has passed, has got to also be passed by the Senate.
That's right.
But what's your speculation on what's going to become of the contract legislation in the Senate now?
I think you'll see a very high percentage of it passed. It'll be changed naturally because they like to get into conference, and once it gets into conference, you have a good possibility of even improving it. And Bill Shipp, don't you repeat this, but the president too told me the other day, when I talked about the tax issue, he says, you know, there are a lot of good provisions in that contract. A lot of good provisions that I think we're going to be able to agree on. I think you're going to see a lot of the things in that contract become law. Why would the president not say, hey, I like all of that, and just swing over there with us to begin with? He can't. No one really can unless you're already over there. Took Nathan 110 days, didn't it? But if you're over here, and all of a sudden you swing over here, you've left all this group behind. This group over here very skeptical of you. Not going to accept you. So you have to make that trend slowly. Of course, I don't think he's going to ever get any further than maybe right here. But there are a lot of people that will get further than right there and even get over here, and that's what's going to make the contract with America become a reality by the end of this year. Most all of it will be in law, it'll be passed by both bodies and signed by the president. Thank you. Enjoy being with you.